Hi, I'm artist Jenny Floravita and welcome back to my art studio. Let's begin this beautiful hibiscus painting, and I saw these flowers in Hawaii on a trip. Today I'm going to be using primarily Opera Pink, and that's a Daniel Smith watercolor. I like this color because it offers a bright, upbeat pink that's very pure. And then the reddish tints are going to be composed of a mix of the Opera Pink and Permanent Rose. Permanent Rose is a Winsor & Newton Professional Watercolor Series color. What you're not seeing here is that in between dipping my brush in the water and grabbing more paint, I'm often dabbing my brush on a paper towel. I almost always have a paper towel in my hand when I'm working. And the brush that I'm using is a size 8 round. It has a nice little tip and it holds the water really well. And I think I use this brush through the entire painting. What I'm doing first is I'm putting in the underlaying colors of the pink hibiscus flowers. There's two ways that you can approach a painting like this. You could paint the shadows first, or you could kind of paint the hues of the flower and then work in the shadows softly later. And I've done a few paintings, you can see them, where I've shown you how you can do shadows first. This time I'm going to show you how you can do the base colors instead of shadows. And while the petals are wet, I like to go back in and layer just a little bit of color. So these first petals have basically a pink, usually the Daniel Smith Opera Pink. And then for the shadow area, instead of using a violet, at this point I dipped my brush into the Winsor & Newton Permanent Rose, and I'm using that for the shadows, and I'm looking carefully. A pink flower isn't just pink. A pink flower can have light pinks and cool pinks and warmer pinks. I think you just have to keep looking and observing your flower when you're painting. And I'm doing the same with the leaves. As I begin to paint the leaves, I'm seeing some golden yellow colors, I'm seeing some green colors, I'm seeing some blues. And mostly for the green leaves, I've got Permanent Sap Green, I'm using Winsor & Newton Cadmium Yellow, I'm using some Cobalt Blue, and some Carbazole Violet. The Carbazole Violet is a Daniel Smith color, and the other colors that I mentioned are all Winsor & Newton Professional Artist Series paints. I realize that these paints are more expensive, and I only use professional paints in my own work, but if you don't have these exact colors, just do a color swatch and try to make a match. And I suggest this for just about anybody who's a beginning painter, or if you haven't painted in a while. It's a good idea to do a color swatch as you paint, or just have some scrap watercolor paper right next to you and then test your colors as you go. I did this for years. I always had a piece of test paper next to me. It's very helpful. And I'd like to point out that sometimes when you see the paint colors and you see the printed version of what you think that paint color should be, like for example the Winsor & Newton Permanent Rose, it has a swatch of a pink color on it, but really this is more of a red. So when you see a paint in a store or online, that color might not exactly be the color that you're going to get. It doesn't really matter so much because you're going to learn to use the colors that you do have in your palette to your advantage. And remember, if you can always mix colors to get the right color, and you just get good with that over time. But if you want a true pink, the Daniel Smith Opera Pink is a very nice pink. And I use these two colors a lot with flowers lately. And I find that they really complement each other because one's kind of a cool color and one's kind of a warm color. The Opera Pink is cooler and in hue, and then the Winsor & Newton Permanent Rose, that's a warmer color. And you probably noticed that what I did was I alternated petals. While a petal is drying, I'll go to a petal that's not going to touch if I don't want colors to bleed. That's not so important when you're layering because usually you're not wetting the entire surface, but for the beginning parts of painting a petal like this, I think that's important. And it's time for a tea break. And so here we are. This is where we're at with the painting. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to start painting more of the shadows, and I'm going to do shadows with some of the reds and the pinks. And then a little bit later, I'm going to layer a little bit of Carbazole Violets into the areas that are cooler. And I'm getting a little bit bolder. With these shadows, you don't want to get it too muddy or too strong. You don't want to do too much lifting. I should tell you that the paper that I'm using is an Arches 140 pound press, so I've taped the paper down. But when I do large watercolor paintings with flowers, I only use 300 pound paper, and that behaves a little bit differently, especially the hot press. The hot press is kind of in between a 140 or 90 pound hot press with Arches and maybe like a cold press paper. It's got a softer texture and the paper's really thick, so you can do a lot of lifting of paint in a flower like this. And at some point I'll do a larger painting and I'll show you that technique, because I do utilize lifting color out to get highlights when I paint flowers on bigger paintings. But for a painting like this, one advantage to using like 140 pound press paper is that the color stays vibrant quicker, because the paint literally stays on top of the paper, whereas the thicker paper, the paint absorbs and you kind of have to layer the paint thicker, and you have to do a little bit more layering if you want really vibrant work. So for this tutorial, just to get really quick colors, I felt like it was easier to use 140 pound paper, and that's what I'm primarily using for these quicker tutorials. And with the leaves, I'm turning my brush on the side. If you like my work, please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell notification, leave a comment for me, hit the like button. All those things help my small channel to grow. And if you'd like to see more of my fine art, you can see my work at floravitalights.com. I do watercolor paintings, oil paintings, and mixed media, and I also produce a line of really beautiful hand-painted glass lights where I make the entire glass piece and the iron fixture. You can see those. They're chandeliers and table lamps and night lights, and those again are all on my website, floravitalights.com. Thank you, and until next time.